Hello everyone and welcome to this week's tutorial. In this one it's going to be another freelancing type video, and today I'm going to be talking about an interesting topic of freelancing clients who don't communicate or respond. There are of course some legitimate and some illegitimate reasons why a client may or may not reply to you, and today I'm going to be going over some real examples, of course not naming any names, but real examples of different reasons of why sometimes you may not receive replies, what you can do in response, and how to avoid this in the future. Before we do get started with this video, I do want to remind you down below, hit subscribe and the bell icon to be notified of new videos coming out twice weekly on the channel, and down in the description you can follow us on GitHub where I post coding updates, as well as Instagram for other live updates. If you haven't already joined the Discord server, make sure you do so in the link in the description, where you can join our scripting, extensions, plugins, UXP plugins, expressions channels, submit tutorial ideas, hang out with some of our awesome and knowledgeable members, and much more. And also in the description you can help support on YouTube by becoming a channel member, supporter, premium supporter, or VIP, and that comes with cool perks like Discord status, badges, and much more. And also check out the links down below for 80 Scripts, Gumroad, and Adobe Exchange to see some other cool stuff that I make. So in the past I have made all kinds of freelancing videos, whether it be red flags to look out, planning out your business, and of course the general communication video that I created. But today is something a little bit more on the annoying side, that it is along the lines of communication, but doesn't always necessarily pan out the way you thought. So in communication, we talked a lot about establishing how you're going to communicate with the client up front, and understanding how often and how clear things like updates will need to be, so that way everything is in line and there's no surprises or angry customers due to a slow or sometimes even too fast of a response time. But sometimes in the middle of a project, there can be all kinds of problems on your end, on the client's end, or just in terms of communication breakdown in general. This could be a language barrier, and some of the things we'll go over today. I would say in general, there are probably three main reasons why you don't receive a reply, whether this is after you've started a project or are in the planning stage. Of course, you are much less likely to receive a ghost or no reply if you're still planning the project, because at this point the client hasn't locked into anything, and they totally have free reign to just disappear if they want to. If you send them a quote and you don't hear from them again, it could be because they're shopping around for different quotes from different freelancers. You may hear back from them later, or you may not. So reason number one, you or the client may have become busy, or you may have forgot, they may have forgot, or they may have put replying to their emails in the background. They may have a massive email list. It could be swamped with emails. They may not keep their emails organized, so you may have just gotten put on the back burner, so to speak, to go to respond to after they finish more important stuff, if that is the case. If you feel like this is the case and you're fairly new to communicating with them, or it's a fairly fresh project you started, this may be a good time to send a follow-up email or message to communicate with them or to reiterate questions. If you're not sure what to say, it may just be good to say, hey, I haven't heard back from you in a week or a month or however long it's been. Is everything still on track? Or you can just ask the same questions you asked in the previous email. If you're kind of going back and forth about features, you could just say, hey, I was just double checking about this feature, and just ask normal questions that don't try and make it seem like you're prodding to speed up the project in any way. This is probably the most common thing I see happen in projects I work on. Even if you communicate early on with the client that you're going to be communicating quite often and quite clearly as to all the updates you're making, there can be times where they have other projects appear and this makes them occupied and not as able to respond to you. Or it could be that you also have other projects that take priority that show up over that project, and you have to focus on those instead of either communicating or sending an update. So these are more common than the rest of them that we're going to be going over, because it's quite common to have other freelance work come in for either you or the client. But again, just sending a follow-up email or message, whatever communication you're using, is the best way to proceed in this situation. Number two is somewhat along the same lines, but also kind of different. Your email may have already been read, or as I said, not everyone has a clean inbox. So they could have a full inbox and totally missed or accidentally removed your email. There have been times when I've received emails, opened them up right out of bed, and accidentally put them in the trash can, or read them and put them in my read folder. And then I get an email 2 days later saying, hey, we haven't heard from you, and then I realize, wow, I totally spaced on this and was too tired to actually do it properly. So whether this ends up being your fault or theirs, you might want to consider having alternate platforms or methods to communicate with them. If you're just communicating through email, that can be these days considered a more snail mail way of communicating. It may be good to have a Slack channel for larger projects and companies, a Discord contact, Skype, or even text messaging and things like that, just to communicate clearly and effectively with your client. If you haven't already noticed, I have tons of apps down here just for communication between Discord, Skype, Slack, and of course, I do even communicate with some clients directly on my phone if they want to do that. And this will also kind of establish a stronger rapport or relationship with you and your client if you do have multiple communication methods, or you have a more close intimacy kind of communication where you're directly texting their personal number rather than sending them a sort of professional email. They may be more apt to communicate with you if you're doing more of a direct, friendly communication like that. And the last one, are you ready? Ghosts might exist. This has been one of the hardest things for me to learn. Not that ghosts might exist, they definitely don't, but that is that some people will simply just ghost you. This is something to learn in life in general, with friendships as well as business. Sometimes people do have the ability to just simply disappear and they can run off with your work if you haven't properly obfuscated or encrypted or protected it, or they might just vanish with incomplete work. This has happened as well. Sometimes people simply vanish and don't communicate again with you. And the hard part about this is to not dwell on it too much. The hard part is that, one, this is usually your income. So if someone just disappears with half of a project's worth of income, which could be a month or two's rent for you, this can be pretty difficult to swallow, but sometimes this is just going to happen. For me, these ghosts have actually happened maybe 4 or 5 times in all of the jobs I've worked. And these are projects which I've already been paid half of for. So that's the really weird case, is when you've fully agreed to the terms of a project, you've agreed to maybe 50 up front, 50 at the end of the project, but for some reason in the middle of the project, even after paying it and even after you've distributed the encrypted code to them, they disappear with the project. There's no common factor I've noticed in these, and they all seem to be people from all over the world and just vanish in the middle of a project. So don't dwell on it too much. You will get more of these happening the more projects you work on, which means you're going to lose a little bit more money, but you're also going to be having more projects accepted and going all the way through at the same time. And of course, you should have already established upfront how you and the client will communicate, whether it be very often or sparsely communicated. And just, of course, this is just a reminder so that these three things don't happen as often, because if you do communicate upfront and say, I expect you to communicate once a week or updates every so often, then you're much less likely to experience these because the client and you are on the same page. Another point that's kind of related, but not an entire point, is that it is also common for you as a freelancer or the client to have a slow period where things get in the way. This could be, again, when another freelancer or another client is super busy and your project takes a lower priority, so that basically you're not going to hear from them until they've cleared up their space. Communication in these times may be slow, but it should also not be completely non-existent. If you know that they're physically working on other projects at the same time as yours, there's nothing wrong with this, of course, but just make sure that they do keep communicating with you and that you say that to them, that you expect communication to some degree even during these slower work periods. And as I said, I've worked on probably about 5 projects at this point where clients completely disappear in the middle of the project even after paying. So again, it's super important to have terms up front in case if these happen. It's important to have at least some written form of what the project and all the details that you're working on, so that you can reference that in case if something happens in the future. And it's also important to make sure you protect all of your code so they can't simply run off with only paying for half of it. And it's also important that you ask for payment up front. If you're going to do work, send it, and then they disappear. If someone can't agree to those simple terms of payment up front, as well as a detailed list of all the things that you as a programmer need to do, then you really shouldn't work with those people. And with these ghost projects, I've had people I've talked to up to a few weeks, a few months, and even a few years after the ghosting and still received no reply. So that's why it's super important to make sure you have all your things situated before the project begins and all the first payments received as well. And the hardest part of all this is to not worry about it and to not get too worked up about it, because it is, one, your money, and two, it's something very confusing that you won't always understand because you'll never get a legitimate reason for why someone has disappeared or stopped communicating. And like I said, the more projects you take on, the more of these you'll experience, which is a good and bad thing in that you will be making more money on the side of these disappearing projects. You'll get more experience to avoid this kind of thing in the future and make communication more clear up front. And you'll also, to some degree, get desensitized to these disappearing people. But that's pretty much it. That's about the three main reasons and things to expect of freelancing clients who don't respond and communicate. It usually has to do with them or you getting busy, accidental mistakes of missing an email or putting it in the wrong place, not having enough lines of communication already open, not having communicated enough upfront about how often communication and replies should be happening, and sometimes people just disappear and are ghosts. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button. Down below, hit subscribe and the bell icon to be notified of new videos coming out twice weekly in the channel. And down in the description, you can follow us on GitHub for coding updates, as well as Instagram for other live updates. If you're not already a member of our Discord server, make sure you come and join to get help with scripting, extensions, plugins, submit tutorial ideas, and much more. And if you'd like to help support us on YouTube, you can do so in the description by becoming a member, supporter, premium supporter, or VIP, which comes with cool perks. And you can also check out the links in the description to AE Scripts, Adobe Exchange, Gumroad to check out some of the other cool stuff that I make. Thanks again for watching. We'll communicate with you next time.